Well, today we started talking about the concept of who we are and identity. And we were focusing on the fact that identity is so much more than what we do, that our behaviors don't create our identity, but our identities will always dictate our behaviors. We talked about the fact that if you want to know who someone is, simply watch what they do, for their behaviors will reveal their identity in time. But on the other side, if you want to transform who you are, then behavior modification's not gonna do it. You need a heart change. And so we started talking about this notion of taking a look at that question of who are you? And so many of us are so good at playing roles that so many of us, for as long as we can remember, have been people that have been who they thought other people wanted them to be, who their families wanted to be, who their spouses wanted them to be, who their friends wanted them to be, who their careers wanted them to be. And so there are some people that are just out of practice of answering that question of who are you? And so this week the invitation was to spend some time to really get a handle on who you are. And we talked about the fact that in order to do that, the first place to start is to examine your behaviors. Keep a list of the things that you do. Are you a glass half full person or a glass half empty person? How do you treat other people? What do you feel about life? And what do you do at work? What do you do when nobody's watching? All of those things are so important in understanding our identity, not because they define our identity, but because they reveal it. And I use the example of the Matrix in the scene where Morpheus met with Neo and presented him with two pills. One would cause him to wake up and forget the conversation and go on with his life. The other one would take him down the rabbit hole into Wonderland. And he had to make a decision. And Neo made the decision based on who he was. Just like you and I do the exact same thing. Every single day we make decisions based on who we are. Not based on what we do, but who we are. So our identity, who we are, always informs what we do. But what we do will never change who we are. Because each and every single one of us are good actors. We're good at pretending. We're good at being someone that we think someone else wants us to be or some situation wants us to be. But true identity is not about our actions. True identity is about who we are at the very heart of the matter. True identity requires us to back up a little bit and take a look at the larger picture, fully knowing that there's a possibility that when we do back up and look at the larger picture, we won't like it. We won't like what we find out about ourselves. Well, you can't out-sin God's love, so even if you do back up and take a look at who you are, God's never going to leave you, never going to forsake you. So you have that confidence, knowing that even if you come to realize that you're a person that you don't really like, or you're a person you know you don't want to be, that God will meet you in that place and will help you. God will meet you in that place as your picture of who you are is coming into focus. And he will meet you in that place and he'll help you. He'll take you by the hand. After all, God's up in heaven fully knowing who you are already. You're not going to surprise him. You're not going to go through a process of self-discovery and say to God, look, this is who I am. And God's going to say, oh, I'm so surprised. I didn't know that. You don't surprise God with that. He sees the full picture, even before we do. He's able to understand the ins and outs and the idiosyncrasies of who we are, even before we do. But it's a very important process for us to undergo. This process of understanding our identity. For until we get real with God, God will never be real to us. So I guess this week in this Hot Fudge Sunday, the question for you is, do you want to continue to live your life pretending? Do you want to continue living your life being who you think you should be? Or is it time for you to take that step and start to become the person that God created you to be? You know, that just encapsulates the journey to be. That's life. That's life. The movement from real close up to seeing the big picture. And we hope and we pray that you join us this week and you look for that big picture in your life by asking the question, who am I? And a good place to start, if you don't know the answer to that question, is to take note of what you do this week. You know, keep a little journal with you or keep it on your phone. Send yourself a text whenever you do something so you can start to see patterns. For what you do will always reveal who you are. But what you do will never transform who you are. Only God can do that. But the first step in order for that to happen in your life is that you've got to back up and see the big picture. See you, maybe for the very first time. You've got to get real, so God will be real to you. Well, I hope that this week has a great you. And I hope you truly get to know who you are.